Well, hey folks, welcome to Solar Cabin Channel. It feels real good to be able to say that today. Because if you watched my last video, you know that I had a run-in with YouTube over some of their content that was being shown on the off-grid search. And I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to still be around and have a channel this morning. But you know what? After thinking about it a while, I just decided to say, what the hell? It's a beautiful morning, beautiful sunny day here, and I'm going to take the dogs hiking and take you along with me if you'd like to go, and discuss some issues that are relevant to real people that affect us in our daily lives. Now, just so you know, it's early spring here still. We're barely getting into the 40s in the daytime. We just had our last snowstorm a couple days ago. I still have my snowblower out just in case because we may get snow clear up until May sometimes here. And so I'm going to take advantage of this nice sunny day to take the dogs for a hike. The ground is starting to clear up. As you can see, I've got some mess around my place, but you know, for today, I think I'm just going to take it easy, go for a hike with the dogs and enjoy this weather while I've got it. All right, so let's get the dogs in the truck and we'll get on up to where we go hiking in the dunes.
Okay, hopefully you'll be able to hear this and see this without bouncing around too much. This is the dunes where I go hiking with the dogs all the time, and they're out there ahead of me already. The subject today is why, if families have gotten smaller, houses have gotten so much larger. Now that's kind of a broad subject. And just to give you a little background, my folks were born in the 20s. My dad was born in 1921. My mom was born in 1923. Yep, right in the middle of the Depression. And I am the youngest of 9 kids. I had 5 brothers and 3 sisters. And I'm the youngest. So you can see that we came from a homestead, an off-grid farming family. And that was pretty common. That sounds like it's just amazing nowadays, but it was actually pretty common back for people that were born in my folks' age to have big families. That's because a lot of them were in farming communities and rural communities where they didn't know that their kids were going to survive very long, for one thing. The death rate among children was very high because of a lot of diseases. They didn't have a lot of vaccinations or good treatment. They didn't have a lot of good medical treatments, and children died in farm accidents and things like that. So that was one of the reasons that they had big families. The other reason was they needed labor on their farms. So if you had more kids, you was able to do more farm work, and so your farm was a lot more likely to be successful. But back then, oh good grief, they would raise, in fact I knew some families around here that had 9 kids in a 1-bedroom house. But we was a little bit more fortunate than that. We had like 3 bedrooms, but we weren't all in the house at the same time. My brothers and sisters are quite a bit older than me. They had already moved out. Some of them already had kids when I came along. So my folks spread them out. They didn't have them all at once, one right after another like some people do. But big families were really common back then. But over time, a lot of things changed. Attitudes, for one thing. Birth control came along, the pill and things like that made it so that women had more of a say in whether they were going to have so many kids, for one thing. And the attitude that you needed a big family and a lot of kids kind of changed, so that by the 70s, and I was born in the 60s, by the 70s, family size had dropped down to about 5 kids. Now that's still a lot compared to today. So we're talking the U.S. It had dropped down to about 5 kids, and but the housing sizes, and this is what I'm going to talk about, the housing size in the 70s was about 1,200 square feet. That's the average size home that most people were raising 5 kids in. Okay, so things have changed a lot since then, and now it is 2023, and the average size family is only, I think they said 2.3 kids. We'll just say 2 kids. Okay, so people have stopped having as many kids. For one thing, it's really expensive. In fact, I looked it up, and I think it's about, what they say, it's almost $1 million a kid now. Now, this is what they say. I don't think it's really that much for a lot of people, but they say in the U.S. it'll cost you about $1 million. It'll cost you about $1 million to raise a kid up to 18. Now, that's figuring in all kinds of expenses, things from schooling to hospital to housing and food, going to college. You know, those things are very expensive. So, yeah, people just don't have the money to have lots of kids anymore. But even those that have the money and can do it, can afford it, are also still having much smaller families. But here's the thing that's strange, is you would think if people are having smaller families, the size of homes should go down. But instead, starting, you know, in the 80s and 90s and on, we got into the McMansion attitude, and people were buying much larger homes. Even though they had smaller families, they were buying larger homes. And so we have to kind of wonder why that is happening, or was happening. Well, the reason is, basically, it's the banks. Banks don't want to sell small homes because they want to keep you in a house for at least 30 years on a 30-year mortgage and collect that big interest. Small homes don't cost as much. If people buy a small home, they might be able to pay it off in 5 years or 10 years. And then the bank doesn't collect any interest after that. So in order to keep people tied into the banking system and the interest system, they kind of put pressure on the builders and the contractors and the counties that decide on zoning and building codes to build larger homes. And I seen that when I moved back here, 20 years ago now. The county was requiring that you had at least 5 acres and that you had to build a house that was at least 2,000 square feet. And I said, I'm a single guy. Why do I need a house that's 2,000 square feet? You know, I want to build a cabin that's going to be about 400 square feet. No, you can't do that. Well, it turns out I could, because my property was grandfathered in, but that was the restrictions that they had put on people, was basically requiring people to build these larger homes. Now, 2,000 square feet is actually not even as large as the average in the U.S., which is still around 2,500 square feet. That's the average size homes that's being built now, and a lot of them much larger. You know, you get these people that are living 5,000 square foot and a single guy living in that home. It's gotten a lot harder to build, especially harder to find smaller homes unless it's an older home anymore. Instead, you've got all these large homes on the market. People with just a few kids don't really need a home, or no kids. A lot of people are just choosing not to have kids at all. And like I said, it's the banks that kind of created the situation because they want to keep people tied to that 30-year mortgage. Other businesses and corporations that make their money from putting the stuff into those houses. The people that make furniture, the people that make appliances, washing machines and furnaces and all that sort of stuff. Small homes don't take very much equipment and a lot less expensive equipment. So they want the big homes, the expensive homes, so they can put in more appliances, bigger appliances, and fill up those rooms. Because, you know, those businesses, they hire and employ lots of people, and so that's what makes the economy work, is by keeping people always buying more stuff to fill up your big homes. So it's kind of a cycle that we've got into, and now it's a tough cycle for us to break, but really we just don't need those big homes anymore. And it's starting in some areas. They've started to realize that. They've started to allow smaller homes. Even in my area now, they'll allow smaller homes. But for a long time, it was very difficult to build or buy a smaller home. And now a lot of people are deciding that, you know, I don't even want a standard size 2,500 square foot home. A lot of people are looking for homes in the 1,000 square foot range or 1,500 square foot range. That's what they're looking for. Especially people that are either decide they don't want to have children or possibly are retired and their kids are grown and out of the house, which is, you know, what kids are supposed to do. Back in the days, it wasn't, you know, probably 10 years ago or so, when the economy was kind of in a disaster, a lot of kids ended up having to leave college and go home and stay with their parents, and some of them never left, but you know, the parents had to end up taking care of their kids when they're in their 20s, some of them in their 30s. But that's another story. And you know, so here we are in this situation now where we've got all these big houses on the market, and people aren't really interested in them, and they're so much more expensive. I mean, $250,000 hardly gets you anything these days in the way of a house, and people are just looking at it and saying, I just don't see the reason to spend 30 years paying on a mortgage for a house that's way too big. And so people are changing their attitudes. They're having less kids for many reasons, and some of it isn't financial. Some of it is maybe that they just don't want to. Maybe they just don't want to make the population any bigger. And you know, there's some people that say that we're in a population situation where we could see massive population. I believe it was 10 billion coming around the corner. We're at like 8 billion or something like that now, or we will be at 8 billion. And you know, they wonder if that's sustainable. And you know, it might not be. It probably isn't sustainable if we keep building and buying more stuff and polluting the environment and doing all the things that you know, is ruining the planet and making it much more difficult. Then that population probably isn't sustainable. We're going to have make some major changes in the way that we're doing things. And one of those changes that I think that we really need to make is we need to get banks and corporations and that to stop requiring people to build these great big houses. We need to go with smaller houses that are more sustainable. I would rather see them build a smaller house that's under 2,500 square feet, that's super insulated, that includes a solar package with the house for a lot less money, so that people will be able to handle the extreme heats that we've been having and the extreme cold temperatures we've been having, so they won't need to use as much heat and air conditioning. That saves them a lot on their bills, okay? And it would also reduce the amount of grid power that we need to keep everything running if people all had a solar package on their house. So there's a lot of benefit to putting more money into those things. Instead of a larger house, put it into better insulation, put it into more efficient appliances, put it into a solar package, is what I'm saying. That would make a lot more sense than buying a big house. That's kind of where we're at. I think attitudes are changing. I do. I see a lot of people very interested in going off-grid and also just being grid-tied or having solar power. A lot more people interested in electric vehicles. A lot more people are more interested in buying locally and staying in their local area instead of shopping, you know, miles away at a big supermarket or a big, you know, Walmart or whatever. And so attitudes are changing, and hopefully it will get better. Now, not all places are having a reduction in population. Some places like Africa and some places in the eastern nations, India and that, they still have very large populations. Africa is actually increasing in population because healthcare has gotten better. Now they had the same reasoning now that my folks had way back, and that is that you need to have a lot of kids because a lot of your children probably weren't going to survive. So in Africa, they had a lot of kids for a long time, but a lot of them didn't survive, so their families were fairly low. They didn't have big numbers. But now we have improved health care. Hi, Taz. Now we have improved health care, and so the infant mortality rate has come down. More children are surviving, and so, but their practices and their attitudes haven't quite caught up to that yet. and so they're still not voluntarily reducing family size, which is what it really takes. We don't want to force reduce size like happened. We don't want to force reduce family size like they did in China with their one birth policy. We're not promoting that in any way. I don't think that's right, but we need to address the issues of a growing population that outgrows its resource. If they outgrow their resources, then we got a problem, because then you're going to have a lot of mass migration, and they're going to be moving from wherever they live to some other country trying to survive, and you can't blame people for doing that. And so then you have more pressure on other countries trying to take care of immigrants because their resources are also limited. Everybody's resources are limited, basically by population. They don't grow that fast to take care of a sudden boom in population growth. It takes time for those sorts of things to adjust. So, Africa's going to have to go through some changes too. However, I do think they have the potential, because they have great sunlight there, so they have no problem. They can use solar power and they can build smaller homes, and so maybe they won't have the resource issues that we have had in the United States. And if they start growing their own food and that, then they'll be a lot more self-sufficient, sustainable, which is what we're all going to have to be in the future. So that's what I've been thinking about over the last few days. One of the reasons I started thinking about it is because I just noticed that this old farmhouse, it was just a small farmhouse, and I know that family raised a big family, big bunch of kids there, and they recently tore down that farmhouse, and right behind it they built a great big McMansion. I mean, this thing must have 8 bedrooms in it. It's huge. And I'm just thinking, wow, that's enough probably for 3 families to live in that house that size, but it's probably just one family. So anyway, attitudes are changing, but not fast enough, and we still need to consider what we leave for our kids and our grandkids in the future. If we're going to leave them a planet with enough food and resources that they're going to be able to survive. And the only way we're going to do that is if this generation starts taking responsibility and considering our uses, not thinking that we have to have the biggest, not thinking we have to have the newest phone, the newest computer, the newest vehicle, the newest car or truck, because that's all using up resources. And a lot of those aren't recyclable, and if they're not recycled, they're just going to be lost for our future generations. Alright, so here we are back at the truck. That was a good hike. I hope my rambling made some sense to you. Again, I want to thank everybody that supports the channel. I hope you will like and subscribe if you haven't. And it looks like I'm still here for another day on YouTube, folks. So we made the best of it. And it's been a beautiful day and a nice hike with y'all. Have a great day.